We're live? Great. All right. Welcome, everybody. This is a city council workshop. Today is Monday, April 28th, 2025, and it's 6:00 p.m. On the table, we have Councilor Leonard, Councilor Beck, Councilor Mallor, Councilor Hawes, Councilor Dean, Councilor Fish, Councilor Fournier, Councilor Trembler, myself, Council Chair Pelletier, and we are joined by City Manager Deb Laurie. The first item on the agenda is something I thought we were done with. So let's get into the draft city council guidelines. I was sure we had approved these already.
So we had, I think we did some, the last time we talked about it was late November. We passed out another iteration, hadn't gotten any comments back, but then we started making some additional changes. So for example, we've passed the ordinance that now change, or the order that now changes the council start time to 7 o'clock at night. That was a big change. We added in a reference to the policy that the council's adopted related to the election of a city council chair. We have updated our remote meeting, remote participation policy since we last discussed this. We've also added a section related to our recently adopted public comments policy. We've added language in our boards, committees, and commissions to reference our public comment policy. And under committees, boards, and commissions, we've created a link to the complete listing of all of our citizen boards, committees, and commissions. We clarified the distinction between advisory committees and those with delegated decision-making authority, and listed those with decision-making authority and added links to the authorizing ordinance. Some changes, and again, so those are the only changes that have been made. And since the last time, and I think we've been trying to adopt this because we've been trying to codify what has been longstanding practices. And, you know, it's very helpful to have that to go by. So if there's any additional feedback or thoughts.
Questions or comments? Yes, Councilor Mallor.
The only comment I'll have is that generally speaking, I appreciate the work I appreciate the work's been done anyway, not just generally. And generally speaking, I agree with everything, but I'm not terribly excited about not using quorum amount for all committees.
Is that part of these city council guidelines?
Yep.
It is because it's referencing
Right.
the ordinance that you all are considering this evening.
Got it.
So I wanted to have it as up to date as possible so that if you were comfortable, obviously if that ordinance fails, we'll go in and revise those to reflect that.
Okay, that makes sense.
That's it.
Yes, Councilor Hawes.
I don't really have any comments. I think I like this final, well, I don't know if it's final, but I like this. Yeah, right. This rendition, I think, covers about everything. This is at least the third time that we have read these through and gone by them, and I don't know how much more we could add to it, so I would be of the mind to move them forward when discussion has completed. Because there may still be people with comments.
If there are no additional comments, I'll take a motion.
Okay, I would move that we move these. Where are we moving them?
It would go to council
Oh, yes,
and you'd have an order adopting
the
the
order, that's
policy.
what we need.
And then as things change and evolve, you always have the opportunity to amend.
Okay, I would move that we put these to a council order and move them forward for passage.
I had a question on the wording on the B and the composition of the council. And I don't know, I think it must be worded differently in the charter, because the way I'm reading this, it sounds like you can't serve more than 3 complete consecutive terms, but I think they must word it differently. You can, the way I know you can take a term a year off, but the way
Right.
that reads, that's
Okay.
the most you can do, the
Yeah,
way I'm reading it.
okay.
But it must read differently in the.
It is, because it is meant to be, you can't serve.
Right, but
More
the way
than
that
3
sounds is that's the most you
successives.
can do.
Okay,
I don't know how it's worded differently, but.
Okay, I will try to clarify that based on the exact
Right.
language. from the-
Yeah.
I tried to perhaps make it more
Right, no,
English.
I know what you meant, but it
Yeah,
sounds like that's.
Yeah.
the motion, but-
With that change, I'll second the motion.
We have a motion, we have a second. Seeing no objection.
all right.
Legislative update.
Yes, so interestingly enough, even since Friday, we have more items. For those of you that have been watching perhaps as bills get printed and hearings get scheduled, they're coming out at a very fast and furious pace. So in your pocket, we had two bills, LD 852, an act to reduce the property tax burden by adequately funding county jail operations. As many of you may know, this, how county operations are funded. Are they assess taxes to every municipality within the county? So additional funding for counties should limit or lessen the financial burden for municipalities. The city of Bangor pays somewhere between 23% and 24% of the total tax for the county.
Good drop, actually, we're close to 21 now.
Are we?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So I haven't seen the new number. So we thought that obviously in the year that we are emphasizing and trying to find ways to provide property tax relief, we do view this as a property tax relief item.
Questions or comments? Is there any opposition to supporting this bill? Okay,
LD 1645 is an act to improve legislative access to public information. That hearing date happened today as well. So what it would do is in essence, create a separate provision within the FOA law. That if three legislators requested information and they were all members of the Legislative Oversight Committee, and one of those members was the chair of that committee, their request for information would have to be fulfilled within 20 days. And I believe that they may be trying to get at something within state agencies. But as FOIA law applies to all of us, it felt like a little bit of a too broad of a bill. So to us, I think we'd like to oppose that, or at least say, suggest that you exempt municipalities or identify the agencies to whom this would apply specifically.
questions or comments?
Just
Yes, Councilor
one
Mellon.
quick question. Is this oral or written?
We've been submitting them all written.
Okay, that's what I
Yep,
thought, but I just
yep.
want. Thank you.
And for those that are interested, so the state's testimony, their archiver was pretty robust. So you can go into any bill from any session, even if it was 5 years ago, and pull up testimony. So that actually stays there in perpetuity and is accessible to the public.
I'm not necessarily opposed to this. As written, I mean, I would imagine if it's coming, the request is coming from the Government Oversight Committee. You have to have 3 people and it's the chair. That what they would be asking for would be important information, right? They're not just gonna ask you for your receipt for your expense for your, you know, Burger King for your employees, right?
Correct.
They're looking for something
Correct.
important, and I think it's in terms of transparency and government accountability, it's important to do that. On the other hand, I know, for example, our PD is overrun with FOA requests, and answering them is nearly a full-time job. So I am in favor of clarifying what kinds of requests are impacted by this legislation. But I don't know that I would oppose it outright as written. Other thoughts on it?
Sorry, but 2 new ads today. So earlier today, Council Chair Pelletier and I both received an email from Representative Rana. that her bill has been printed. And the bill that, she's presenting is an act to establish the biohazard waste disposal grant program to support public health efforts in the state. And basically what this would create is a grant program at the state level, that would allow for the appropriate, disposal of syringe waste within a community. Obviously something we're having to all figure out on our own right now, so if there was a state program to do that, I think we would all be very supportive of that.
I don't see any, yes,
So when the grants themselves, do they come through us and then we then disperse them, or do they go directly to like the Wabanaki or whoever?
They said the Senate shall make grants under the program available to community-based organizations, including hypodermic exchange, apparatus
Okay.
exchange programs, pursuant to section 1341, and municipalities, including municipal health departments.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Okay.
Another kind of interesting little one here is LD 1814. So LD 1814, again, is an act to increase transparency in state government by amending laws regarding persons attempting to influence the competitive bidding process and lobbyist reporting during rulemaking processes. So we saw this and thought, to your point, Council Chair Pelletier, there's nothing wrong with transparency. No one should try to influence a competitive bidding process. We're all with you. And then buried on page, where is it? Buried on page 4, 5, and 6 is it begins to insert language that would say that if anyone is paid, and that could be myself as a city manager, Courtney as an assistant city manager, Amanda as your water quality director, is that we could be viewed as a lobbyist by participating in the public rulemaking process. So they have added the proposed agency rule and rulemaking process to activities that would trigger somebody having to need to register as a lobbyist. And so that's how many of us have read it. I don't believe it was intentional to try to prevent those of us who may be impacted to provide relevant information to a body as they go through the rulemaking process, but I think it's an unintentional act. So we would like to get some clarification on that. So for example, your water quality director was at the ENR committee all day today, speaking to, and when I talked to her afterwards, she's like, I think we were able to share information so that they understand the municipal impacts. It's not about influencing per se, it's about sharing information so that people have the information they need to make the right and appropriate decisions that they see fit. So it was a little concerning that that sort of got added in as considered lobbying. Because if you spend more than 8 hours a month working on these efforts, either doing research, preparing memorandums, or doing emails or speaking to anybody within these agencies, we may trip over being viewed as a lobbyist. Felt a little much.
yeah,
So I think we'd like to get some clarification on intent and share our concerns.
is anyone opposed? None, okay,
Oh, wow. On a roll. That was it for the legislative items. I am going to say I do continue to hear that are continuing to print pretty rapidly bills. So be on the lookout for some potential emails. I think I did include it in there that they have waived the 1 weekend scheduling requirement over the next several weeks. Public hearings and work sessions will be scheduled with as little as 24 hours notice. At this time, legislative committees have been instructed to conduct votes on all assigned bills by May 9th, which would be next Friday.
Mhm.
So things are gonna move quickly.
Speaking of the legislature, I did email you all, but in case you haven't checked it, it is Maine Mayor's Day at the State House tomorrow. Mayor's Coalition is going. There's a handful of us who will be there. We're gonna shake hands with legislators. There are, I think, one or two issues related to service center cities that we've been discussing that may come up in conversation. Where the city council has not taken a position on those, I'll be clear in my conversations. But I think it's mostly just to get in front of the legislature. And we'll have a chance to meet with the governor as well. So,
Nice.
so if anything comes up in the morning.
Yes, I'll shoot you a text.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, city manager update.
Yes, so, many of you may know that Maine Housing had issued an RFQ to establish housing first programs in the state. And that has wrapped up. The process sought responses to select developer, owner, manager, service provider teams to develop and operate site-based housing with 24-hour on-site staffing. Support for people experiencing chronic homelessness. My understanding is that 5 proposals have been accepted by Maine Housing, one in each of the following communities: Auburn, Augusta, Bangor, Portland, and Sanford. And the applicant that was chosen for Bangor, the applicant team that was chosen for Bangor, was the team of Bangor Housing Authority in Preble Street. So, obviously,
Location.
I do not. I think Mike Myatt is kind of has some ideas. Bangor Housing has some ideas on that. It could, because I have talked with Preble Street as well. So I believe I know where their location is, but I will not share something that may or may not be true.
Do we know how many units there?
I don't.
Okay.
I don't. This was a process to identify. So it's kind of an interesting process, I think, and I think one that hopefully bodes well for these projects is it's not just about building the building. It's about the services, and it's about ensuring that you have a good team that are working together to support the needs of individuals. So to do it as an RFQ, to have to talk about why you're qualified to construct, maintain, or operate housing versus providing supportive services, I think is a really interesting opportunity and probably a better process, and I think will result in better projects. Just my opinion. So this may be a little late, but when I was typing this on Friday, there had not been significant media coverage yet, but I think by now folks have seen with the current federal administration's suspension of refugee resettlement, the loss of federal funding, and our area being the area with the smallest concentration of clients, Catholic Charities of Maine has determined that closing the Greater Bangor Refugee and Immigration Service office is necessary. The office in Southern Maine will continue to remain open to support new Mainers in our community. On a somewhat not a somewhat different note, we've started to delve into the budget process. Obviously, we heard the council and your concern for the increasing burden on our residential taxpayers. So as part of that process, there are a couple of areas that I'm going to call the lower hanging. There is no low hanging, but we're going to look at the lower hanging that we're looking at. So one of those, the assessor has gone back to relook at assessed values to determine what has there been a significant shift in the market. So if you think about it, the market adjustments he proposes are based on activity from July 1, 2023 to June 30th of 2024. So he's looked at additional data since then. And so there may likely be some changes in what he's proposing for assessment changes. So our hope is that may provide some positive relief. He believes he'll be wrapping that up this week, so you can expect that that's likely on next week's budget committee. The other item we're looking at is as paid family medical leave rolls out, what we are finding is there are commercial insurers stepping into that. So we have an opportunity to potentially lessen the cost by looking for a commercial insurance policy in lieu of. It would have to comply with all of the requirements of the state. program that's currently in place, but it would actually lower the cost. So those are sort of the lowerish hanging ones that we're looking at right now. And staff will continue to look for other opportunities as we work through this process. The last piece is, I did bring it up during our last public comment section at the end of our meeting last time. But I know there's been a lot of conversations and concerns about 287G agreements. So just to be clear, the 287G program has been in place for nearly 30 years. I did share that this has been a longstanding program. The city has never participated in it. I don't anticipate we would ever participate in it. I just wanted to point out that this is a 30+ year program. We, like thousands of other law enforcement agencies across the state, receive similar notices. It's an offer, it's an opportunity. If people choose, that's fine. It's just not something we've participated in 30 years, and I don't expect us to begin to. So.
Questions for the city manager?
Well, I mean, on the topic of that, I mean, a lot of people are emailing and asking for an ordinance about it. And I guess from that standpoint, I mean, I'm with you. If we haven't done it for 30 years, we're not gonna do it in a hurry, but however, for a lot of people, it's a nerve-wracking time.
Understood.
And I'm wondering if this is something that the council we can discuss at some point soon. I know what this has been asked for, and hopefully we can have it soon about, can we codify this in writing? Just, let's just put it out there. Yes, we're saying we're not going to, but now we've codified it and said we're not going to, like other communities have, just for people's benefit. And it's something I would at least like this to have the conversation at some point soon.
Councilor Leonard?
Thank you for those words, Councilor Beck. I think it's actually incredibly important that we codify this. There is right now, there are supposedly deportations going on throughout the United States right now, but without due process of these deportations, no due process doesn't actually mean that these are deportations. They're basically kidnappings or human trafficking, basically, to our immigrant communities. This is incredibly dangerous for them. And we really do have a choice. Do we want to stand by what is the future of Maine regarding our labor force, and listen to them and stand with them and make sure that they know that we have their back? Or do we just not really respond to that? And I think it would be grossly inappropriate of us to not listen to our citizens and not see what's happening legally right now at the federal level, and make sure that we stand on the right path of history at this point, because this is wildly unconstitutional what Immigration Customs Enforcement is doing right now. So I think it's paramount that we codify this.
So I had asked when we started receiving those emails if we could bring it to a GovOps committee. If you think that's the right place, we can do it there, or if you think it deserves a full council discussion, we
Maybe
can do it as a
full council.
workshop.
Yeah.
But yeah, I agree. Let's at least have the conversation. I have 2 questions. Where are we on Teresa's place?
Still not open. I will check with code.
Okay.
And the last I had checked, they had not gone back for the final inspection. I do know that interviews have been happening, but I do not know that anybody has received, basically lease up. I assume that perhaps tomorrow, I believe Councilor Beck and I will be spending some time with Equus at their childcare ribbon cutting tomorrow.
Right. Yes, it would be nice for us to find out when that is
Yeah.
opening, since it was supposed to be in February.
Yeah.
My second question is, I see that we've rescheduled the joint budget meeting for Wednesday night. Is that the-
Yes.
Do we anticipate that we will see members of the school committee?
Yes, yes,
Fantastic.
yes.
Those are my questions. Thank you.
Confirmed twice, as the
Confirmed twice.
finance director says.
Anything else for the city manager? All right, we are adjourned.